Look at her, James, Eleanor continued, turning to my husband. Brown eyes, dark hair, nothing like our family, nothing like your sister Sarah's perfect children. Something's not right here. I watched my daughter's lower lip tremble, and something inside me snapped. After 7 years of Eleanor's thinly veiled insults and constant comparisons to her real grandchildren, this was the final straw. Emma, sweetheart, I said calmly, why don't you go show your cousins your new art supplies upstairs? As soon as she left the room, I turned to face Eleanor, maintaining the composed smile that had become my armor over the years. You're right, Eleanor. Something isn't right here. In fact, I've been gathering evidence about exactly what isn't right for months now. I reached into my purse, fingers brushing against the envelope I'd been carrying for weeks, waiting for the right moment. My name is Olivia Mitchell, and at 35, I'd spent the last decade being the target of Eleanor's particular brand of cruelty. When I married James, I thought her attitude would improve with time. When Emma was born, I prayed that having a grandchild would soften her heart. Instead, she only got worse, especially after her daughter Sarah had her own children, twins with blonde hair and blue eyes that Eleanor deemed proper Mitchell features. What are you talking about? Eleanor scoffed, adjusting her designer blouse with manicured fingers. Evidence of what? Mom, maybe we should just focus on Emma's birthday. James attempted to intervene, but I could see the familiar uncertainty in his eyes. He'd always struggled to stand up to his mother, even when she was clearly wrong. No, James, I said firmly. Your mother wants to talk about family resemblance and proper Mitchell features. Let's talk about it. I pulled out the envelope, my hands steady despite the adrenaline coursing through my veins. Eleanor's face paled slightly. Whatever nonsense you're about to spew. DNA doesn't lie, Eleanor. I cut her off, my voice carrying across the room. And neither do timestamp photos from the country club where your daughter Sarah met her tennis instructor 3 years before her twins were born. The room went silent. James stepped forward, confusion etched across his features. Olivia, what are you saying? I'm saying that if we want to discuss family resemblance, we should start with why your sister's twins look remarkably like their mother's former tennis instructor, and nothing like her husband Thomas. Eleanor's perfectly composed facade cracked. You've lost your mind. Sarah would never. I have the DNA test results right here, I interrupted, pulling out the papers. Funny thing about private investigators, they're very thorough. Especially when you hire them to look into suspicious property transfers, and instead, they find evidence of a long-term affair. James took the papers with trembling hands. I watched as he scanned the results, his face growing increasingly pale. This can't be right. Oh, it's right, I confirmed. And there's more. Would you like to know what else the investigation uncovered, Eleanor? About the money you've been siphoning from the family trust to support Sarah's lifestyle? The trust that's supposed to be divided equally between your grandchildren. Eleanor sank into the nearest chair, her usual imperious demeanor crumbling. You had no right. I had every right, I shot back. The moment you started treating my daughter like she was somehow less than your precious Sarah's children, you gave me every right. I've spent years watching you favor them, praise them, and shower them with gifts while treating Emma like an afterthought, all while knowing, or at least suspecting, that they weren't even Mitchell blood. James was still staring at the DNA results, his world visibly unraveling. Does Thomas know? Not yet, I replied softly. But he will, unless certain things change around here, starting with how Emma is treated. Eleanor's face had gone from pale to flushed with anger. You wouldn't dare. It would destroy Sarah's marriage, her life. Like you've been trying to destroy my daughter's self-esteem, I asked, my voice sharp. Emma is 7 years old, Eleanor. 7. And you've spent her entire life making her feel less than worthy because she doesn't match your idea of what a Mitchell should look like. I turned to James, who was still processing everything. I never wanted to have to do this, but watching our daughter cry after every family gathering, hearing her ask why Grandma doesn't love her as much as her cousins, I couldn't take it anymore. The sound of children's laughter drifted down from upstairs, a stark contrast to the tension filling the living room. Eleanor sat rigid in her chair, her perfect world crumbling around her, while James continued to read through the documentation I provided. We're going to go back to celebrating our daughter's birthday now, I announced, gathering up the papers. And from this point forward, Eleanor, you have a choice. You can either start treating Emma with the love and respect she deserves as your granddaughter, or these documents find their way to Thomas. Your choice. As I turned to head upstairs, I paused at the doorway. Oh, and Eleanor. Emma may not have the classic Mitchell features, but at least she's actually a Mitchell. More than we can say for your other grandchildren, isn't it? The look of shocked defeat on Eleanor's face as I left the room was 7 years in the making. Upstairs, I could hear Emma laughing with her cousins, blissfully unaware of the bomb I'd just dropped on her perfect grandmother's carefully constructed world. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't just about exposing lies. It's about protecting those we love from the people who would tear them down. The next few days were a study in carefully maintained silence. Eleanor had left Emma's birthday party shortly after our confrontation, fighting a sudden migraine. James spent most of his time in his home office, processing everything he'd learned about his sister's deception, and I waited, knowing the real storm was yet to come. It arrived 3 days later in the form of Sarah herself, bursting into our house unannounced while I was preparing dinner. "How dare you?" she shrieked, her designer handbag swinging wildly as she gestured. "Mom told me what you did, the accusations you made. You're trying to destroy my family." I calmly wiped my hands on a dish towel, grateful that Emma was at her art class. "No, Sarah. You destroyed your family when you decided to lie about your children's paternity. I'm just holding up a mirror." Her perfectly made-up face contorted with rage. "You don't know anything. You're just jealous because your daughter isn't." "Isn't what?" I cut her off sharply. "Isn't blonde, isn't blue-eyed, or isn't actually a Mitchell. Because only one of those things matters, and it's not what you think." Sarah's face paled slightly, but she pressed on. "Mom says you're blackmailing her, threatening to tell Thomas." "I'm giving her a choice," I corrected. "She can either start treating my daughter with the same love and respect she shows your children, or, yes, Thomas finds out the truth. It's quite simple, really." "You bitter, vindictive." "Careful," I warned. "I have copies of everything, the DNA tests, the photos, the bank records showing how your mother has been funneling money from the family trust to support your lifestyle." "How much does Thomas think you make as a social media consultant, anyway?" She sank into one of our kitchen chairs, her bravado cracking. "You don't understand. Thomas, he'd never forgive me. Like you and your mother never forgave me for not fitting your perfect Mitchell family image." I asked, leaning against the counter. "For 7 years, I've watched you both tear down my daughter's self-esteem. Do you know what Emma asked me last month? She asked if she could dye her hair blonde for her birthday so maybe Grandma would love her more." Sarah at least had the grace to look slightly ashamed. "I never meet." "Yes, you did," I said firmly. "You and your mother both meant every subtle dig, every comparison, every time you push Emma aside to showcase your twins. Well, now the tables have turned." "What do you want?" she whispered. "I told you, I want Emma treated with respect. No more comparisons, no more subtle put-downs, no more making her feel less than your children. And the trust fund manipulation stops immediately. And if we agree, then Thomas never needs to know about your tennis instructor. Your children's inheritance stays intact. Life goes on." I pause, letting the weight of my words sink in. "But if anything, and I mean anything, happens to make Emma feel less than loved and valued by this family again, everything comes out." Sarah stood up, smoothing her expensive dress with trembling hands. "You've changed, Olivia. You used to be so passive." I smiled. "No, I was patient. There's a difference. I spent years documenting everything, building my case, making sure that when I finally stood up for Emma, it would stick. Mothers do that. Protect their children. You should understand that." As she turned to leave, I called after her. "Oh, and Sarah, you might want to have a conversation with your mother about the trust fund. Because if one more penny gets diverted from Emma's share to your accounts, Thomas won't be the only one getting an interesting packet of documents." After she left, I heard movement behind me. James stood in the doorway of the kitchen, his face a mix of emotions. "How long have you known?" he asked quietly. "About Sarah, the twins?" "I suspected something was off about 2 years ago," I admitted. "The way your mother kept emphasizing their Mitchell features while dismissing Emma, it seemed excessive. Then I hired the investigator to look into the trust fund discrepancies, and he found much more than I expected." James ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I'd seen 1,000 times when he was stressed. I should have stood up to them sooner, should have protected Emma better. I softened slightly. You can start now. Emma needs to know her father is in her corner, especially with everything that's about to change in the family. What do you mean? Your mother won't take this lying down, I explained. She'll try to find a way to regain control, and when she can't, she'll lash out. We need to be ready. He nodded slowly. I keep thinking about all the times they made comments about Emma's appearance, and I just let it slide. God, I'm an idiot. You're not an idiot, I said, moving to touch his arm gently. You're someone who couldn't see his mother's manipulation for what it was. But now you know, and we can do better. The sound of the front door opening announced Emma's return from art class. She bounded into the kitchen, her dark curls bouncing, clutching a painting she made. Mommy, Daddy, look, I painted our family. I watched James kneel down to examine her artwork, really seeing our daughter, perhaps for the first time, not through his mother's critical lens, but as the beautiful, creative child she was. The painting showed the three of us, surrounded by hearts and flowers, all sporting enormous smiles. It's beautiful, sweetheart, James said, his voice thick with emotion. Just like you. Emma beamed, and I felt tears prick at my eyes. This was what I fought for, not just justice or revenge, but the chance for my daughter to grow up feeling loved and valued exactly as she was. The storm wasn't over. Eleanor and Sarah would regroup, try to find new angles of attack. But for now, watching my husband and daughter discuss her painting, I knew I'd made the right choice in bringing everything to light. Sometimes, protecting your child means being willing to tear down the walls of silence and expose the ugly truths hiding behind perfect family facades. The annual Mitchell family Christmas gathering arrived 6 months after Emma's birthday party revelation. I stood in Eleanor's lavish foyer, watching the family dynamics shift like tectonic plates around me. The changes were subtle but unmistakable. Eleanor, ever the perfect hostess, had traded her usual barbed comments for careful politeness. When Emma showed her the handmade Christmas ornament she created, my mother-in-law actually smiled, a strained smile, but progress nonetheless. That's lovely, dear, Eleanor said, hanging it on the tree. You have quite an artistic talent. I caught Sarah watching the interaction from across the room, her twins hovering near her like uncertain satellites. The DNA test results had become our unspoken shield, forcing a new kind of peace in the family. Thomas, Sarah's husband, remained blissfully unaware of the truth about his children. Sometimes I caught Sarah looking at him with guilt-laden eyes, especially when he proudly pointed out how the twins had Mitchell features. The irony was almost painful. Olivia. Eleanor's voice pulled me from my thoughts. She stood beside me, her posture as perfect as ever. But something had changed. The imperial edge was gone from her tone. Could we speak privately for a moment? I followed her into her study, the same room where she'd once told James he was making a mistake marrying someone not up to Mitchell's standards. The memory made me stand a little straighter. I've been doing some thinking, she began, settling into her leather chair. About Emma's trust fund portion. Yes. I kept my voice neutral, though my guard was instantly up. I've instructed the trustees to audit all past distributions. Any discrepancies will be corrected. With interest. She met my eyes steadily. Emma will receive her fair share. You have my word. Thank you, I said simply. We both knew it wasn't really a choice, but her initiative to address it was noteworthy. I also want you to know, she paused, seemingly struggling with the words. I've been seeing a therapist. She's helping me understand some things about control and perfectionism. This was unexpected. Eleanor Mitchell, admitting to seeking help. James mentioned Emma has asked to take piano lessons, she continued. I'd like to pay for them. Not from the trust fund, she added quickly. From me? If that's acceptable. I studied her face, searching for the manipulation angle. Instead, I found something that looked surprisingly like regret. That would mean a lot to Emma, I said finally. Thank you. Back in the living room, I found James engaged in an intense discussion with Emma, who was explaining her latest masterpiece to him. He caught my eye and smiled, a real smile, free from the tension that used to weigh on him during family gatherings. Sarah approached me later while I was helping in the kitchen. The twins have been asking about Emma's art class, she said, arranging cookies on a plate. I thought maybe, if it's okay, they could join her sometime. I considered her request. The old Sarah would have demanded, not asked. I think Emma would like that, I replied. She's been wanting to show her cousins how to make friendship bracelets. Sarah nodded, relief visible on her face. I've been thinking about what you said about protecting our children. You were right. I just protected mine the wrong way. By hurting mine, I said quietly. Yes. She set down the plate. I can't change the past. But I'd like to do better going forward. For all the kids. As the evening wound down, I watched Emma playing with her cousins, their laughter echoing through the house. The twins were teaching her a clapping game while she showed them her new art techniques. No competition, no comparisons, just children being children. Eleanor approached, holding a wrapped package. For Emma, she said. I found these old art books in the attic. They belonged to my mother. She was quite talented, actually. I thought Emma might like them. I accepted the peace offering for what it was. She'll love them. Thank you. Later that night, as we drove home, Emma clutched her new art books and chattered excitedly about teaching her cousins to paint. James reached over and squeezed my hand. You know what I realized today, he said softly. This is the first family gathering where I haven't felt like I was choosing sides. I thought about Eleanor's therapy admission, Sarah's tentative steps toward change, and the sound of genuine laughter from all the children. Sometimes people need a wake-up call to realize what they're destroying. Or what they could build instead, James added. Looking in the rearview mirror at Emma, who had fallen asleep with her art books hugged to her chest, I felt a deep sense of satisfaction. The DNA test results still sat in my safe at home. Insurance against any backsliding into old patterns. But maybe, just maybe, we were building something new from the ashes of the perfect Mitchell family facade. Sometimes the greatest victory isn't in winning the war, but in creating a peace worth protecting. For Emma's sake, I hope this one would last. After all, real family strength isn't about perfect features or carefully maintained images. It's about growth, acceptance, and the courage to face hard truths, even when they shatter everything you thought you knew. And sometimes it takes breaking everything down to build something better in its place.